Or if you've just joined us, my name is Dr. Daniel Danckwerts. I'm the Tailor-made Manager at Rockjumper Birding Tours, and I'm really, really excited to be hosting this evening's webinar on Madagascar. Joining me today is Nigel Marven, a legendary wildlife presenter, filmmaker, and conservationist, renowned for his daring approach to nature documentaries. With an electrifying on-screen presence and a passion for bringing audiences face to face with the world's most extraordinary creatures, Nigel has truly redefined wildlife filmmaking. From swimming with great white sharks to tracking venomous snakes through deep rainforests, Nigel's fearless style has captivated millions around the globe. He is best known for his groundbreaking work on Chased by Dinosaurs, Prehistoric Park, and Walking with Dinosaurs, The Giant Claw, where he blended cutting-edge CGI with real-world adventure to bring prehistoric creatures to life. His real-world explorations have taken him across the globe in stunning series like Nigel Marven's Wild Philippines, Untamed China, and The 10 Deadliest Snakes, where he showcases nature's most fascinating and formidable species. With a career spanning several decades, not only 10 decades, Nigel remains a trailblazer in wildlife storytelling, inspiring new generations to appreciate and protect the natural world. Whether facing modern-day predators or stepping back in time to prehistoric landscapes, his name has become synonymous with adventure, education, and conservation. So, Nigel, it's a true pleasure of mine to co-host this webinar with you. We're so excited to explore Madagascar together, and I can't wait to share in your boundless enthusiasm and expertise this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. It's great to be here, and hello to everyone who's listening and watching. I've never been to Madagascar, so that's why I'm very excited about that. And Daniel has been there and knows a lot about it, so I'm looking forward to this as much as everyone else listening in. I'm going there with my friend Nigel Redman on the 1st of November on a rock jumper tour. So it'd be great if some of you could come along. Wouldn't it have been great if we could travel back in time to see elephant birds in Madagascar? That would be fantastic. We never did that, and one of my time traveling adventures, I'd like to do that. But the wildlife there today is fabulous, and Daniel's going to tell me about that and tell all you about that. And I hope that some of you can come along and join me. We'll talk about filming. We can talk about dinosaurs. If you want to have a career in wildlife filmmaking, going to Madagascar with me is a good chance to find out how to do that. And I'll be telling stories about filming and everything. And Nigel Redman is the leader with me, and he's written fantastic books about birding locations all around the world. He is a top-class birder and a friend of mine. So really, really looking forward to it. And I'm really looking forward to Daniel sharing all the information about the island.
Thank you so much, Nigel, and what an absolutely incredibly exciting opportunity to travel with two Nigels, two legendary Nigels. So thank you again for joining forces with us, and we again are so excited to be partnering with you on this incredible venture going forward. So let's dive right in. In today's webinar, we're going to be exploring the evolutionary history that has shaped Madagascar's incredible biodiversity. We're going to be exploring the fascinating world of Madagascar's endemic species, not the zebra, giraffe, lion, and hippo that you find on your screens, and delve into some of the best birding sites on the island. But this is not to suggest that Madagascar is solely a destination for birders. It truly is a wondrous destination characterized by unparalleled endemism and playing host to some of the most incredible species on Earth. These endemics, moreover, are a testament to the incredible marvels of evolution and the importance of conservation, and Nigel and I hope to unpack some of those layers with you this evening. So without further ado, let's explore Madagascar together. Just before I get to Madagascar, please allow me a few seconds to introduce Rockjumper. Now, for those who don't know who we are, I assume that many of you do, but just for the benefit of those who don't know who we are, Rockjumper Worldwide Birding Adventures is a birding tour company, and we offer tours to more than 120 destinations worldwide, including both scheduled and tailor-made departures. Our tours are principally led by a team of incredibly passionate tour leaders who are always eager to share their passion for wildlife with our guests. We operate in the region of 600 tours a year, including a range of different departures to Madagascar that suit most budgetary and time requirements. So if you'd like any more information on who we are, please, or our tours to Madagascar, please feel free to post your questions in the question and answer section that Zoom provides, and Nigel and I would be more than delighted to answer your questions live at the end of this evening's webinar. So on to Madagascar. Madagascar is the world's fourth largest island, laying off the southeast coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean. Its geographic isolation, spanning some 88 million years, has shaped its rich biodiversity, allowing life on the island to evolve in extraordinary ways. Today, over 90% of Madagascar's plants and animals are endemic to the island, and its avian diversity is no exception. Madagascar supports 294 bird species altogether, of which no less than 115 can be found nowhere else on Earth. But to understand Madagascar's unique biodiversity, we need to take one step back and look at the island's geological history. Around 165 million years ago, Madagascar separated from Africa, and around 88 million years ago, it drifted away from the Indian subcontinent. This is clearly reflected in the island's biodiversity, which draws its origins from both Africa and from India. Now, Nigel mentioned the elephant birds, and Madagascar's Gondwanaland origin is further supported by the historic presence of these elephant birds, the largest flying birds that have ever existed, and a member of an ancient group called the Reptiles, which were one day restricted to the Gondwanaland landmass. The ratites otherwise include the ostrich, emu, cassowary, moas, and rays, which all occupy areas that were once part of the southern landmass. Now, elephant birds were driven to extinction by humans as recently as 1,500 years ago, so unfortunately, we would need to step in time to see them. But Madagascar's prolonged isolation has resulted in a unique biological laboratory where many other species have evolved in isolation, resulting in many unique species as well as unique adaptations. Now, one of the things that first fascinated me about the island of Madagascar is that several of Madagascar's most iconic groups of animals, in particular the lemurs and the tenrecs, have arrived long after Madagascar's isolation from Africa and from India. Remember, India separated from Madagascar roughly 88 million years ago. Now, current theories suggest that the ancestors of these lineages arrived by rafting on vegetation across the Mozambican Channel from Africa, or in the case of several important bird groups, by island hopping across the islands of the Comores or the Seychelles from either Africa and from India. Now, I have to admit that this particular slide is cheating. This is not the Madagascan blue pigeon. This is the Seychelles blue pigeon. Unfortunately, I don't have as good photographs of the Madagascar blue pigeon. But while we're on the topic of biogeography, there are always exceptions to the standard rules of biogeography. And I find none quite as intriguing as the blue pigeons, which are an endemic group to the Indian Ocean islands, including to Madagascar. Now, the ancestral origins of these birds still remains unclear, but they appear most closely related to the cloven-feathered fruit dove, which you can see in the insert on the upper left-hand panel of the slide, which occurs only on New Caledonia in the southwest Pacific. And these birds separated from one another roughly 8 to 9 million years ago, Just to reiterate, Madagascar separated from India 88 million years ago. And this suggests that several long-range colonization events may have happened in Madagascar within the recent geological timescales. Now, beyond just its level of isolation, Madagascar's rich diversity is a result of the complex interplay between climate and geology, creating a unique mosaic of ecosystems, some of which are totally unique to the island of Madagascar. Now, this island spans 1,600 kilometers from north to south and 600 kilometers from east to west at its widest point. Madagascar's climate is incredibly diverse, ranging from humid and tropical in the east to arid and semi-desert in the west and the south. This is largely influenced by the trade winds, with the central highlands acting as a rib along the entire eastern edge of the island, creating a rain shadow effect. Madagascar's ancient origins as part of the Gondwanaland supercontinent, combined with its long isolation, have furthermore fostered the development of diverse soils and landscapes. The eastern side of the island is dominated by rich rainforests on uplifted alluvial soils, while the central regions feature montane grasslands on acidic soils that have been shaped by erosion and human activity. The western regions boast unique limestone karst formations, locally known as the Tsingi, which are paired with dry deciduous forests and spiny forest thickets that grow on calcium-rich soils. So this complex interplay between the climate and geology has driven exceptional evolution on Madagascar, making this island one of the world's most biodiverse hotspots. Madagascar's birds truly exemplify evolutionary processes, and the vangas in particular are a prime example of adaptive radiation. For those who may not know, adaptive radiation is the process by which a single ancestral species diverses into a wide variety of forms to occupy different available ecological niches, similar to the Darwin finches. Stemming from an ancestral species that is thought to arrive from Africa roughly 20 to 30 million years ago, the vangas now consist of 21 different species, showcasing an incredible array of morphology, behavior, and ecological roles. They occupy absolutely every habitat on the island, ranging from lush rainforests to spiny deserts, and exhibit diverse feeding strategies, including insectivory, frugivory, and nectarivory. Their bill shapes in particular are a key feature of their adaptive success, ranging from the slender probe-like bills of the sickle-billed vanga, which you can see on the lower left-hand side of the phylogenetic tree here, all the way to the hulking chisel-like bill of the helmet vanga, which is the big black and rufous bird near the top of the slide. This radiation, as I've mentioned, mirrors the famed Darwin finches of the Galapagos, but the vangas display an even broader range of ecological specialization. Who knows, possibly Charles Darwin could have discovered the vangas before he discovered the famed Darwin finches. Their evolution highlights Madagascar's role as a crucible of biodiversity, where isolation and varied habitats have driven speciation as well as ecological innovation. Now, these evolutionary processes, combined with Madagascar's long isolation, varied climate, and diverse geology, have resulted in extraordinary species diversity and endemism. The island today is home to 294 bird species, of which no less than 115 are endemic, 264 mammal species, more than 80% of which are endemic, 363 reptile species, including 95% of which are endemic, countless endemic insects, as well as 310 amphibians, all of which are endemic to Madagascar. For the botanists among you, Madagascar is equally interesting, supporting 70% of the world's baobab species, and we do have chances to see many of these fascinating trees, as well as an incredible 759 orchid species, of which more than 95% are endemic, and the unique spiny forest habitat of the southwest of Madagascar, to which 48% of all genera and 95% of all plant species that occur within this habitat can be found nowhere else on Earth. So, Madagascar truly is a paradise for naturalists. It really is one of the most incredible islands on Earth. But of course, we're all here because of our shared passion for birds. So, let's take a closer look at Madagascar's incredible avifauna. As I've mentioned, Madagascar supports 294 bird species, of which 115 are totally endemic to the island. This constitutes a 40% endemism rate, which is one of the highest endemism rates of any country in the world. Among these endemics are representatives of four endemic bird families, namely the asities, ground rollers, mesites, and Malagasy warblers, as well as two near endemic bird families that are each shared with the Comores, namely the cuckoo-roller and the vangas. And I'll be, over the next few slides, introducing you to each of these endemic and near endemic bird families. Now, some of the other key groups that you can find on Madagascar include the white-eyes. Of course, there is only one species, but the white-eyes are well known as a supertramp or island-hopping group of birds, and they're very well represented across the other Indian Ocean islands, including the Comores, Seychelles, Mauritius, and Reunion. And the same is true for Fodies, which are a highly specialized group of weavers that have occupied the Indian Ocean islands. Although only two species occur on Madagascar, this is an iconic Indian Ocean island group with other endemic species to the Seychelles, to Rodrigues, as well as to Mauritius and the Comores. The koas and the cuckoos, part of the same family, are perhaps the most diverse lineage of birds on Madagascar, including 13 species as well as one extinct species. And quite interestingly, while all of our cuckoos in Africa are parasitic, most of the cuckoos in Madagascar are not. Only a single, I lie, only two cuckoos within Madagascar are parasitic. And then, of course, there are the rails and the flufftails, which once again are an excellent supertramp group of species, up to 6 species on Madagascar, with a number of extinct species on the other islands, and they're very well represented in several habitats on the island. As I mentioned too, Madagascar's species origins are primarily from Africa and from India, and many of these avian groups arrived by island hopping or have simply found their way across the Mozambican Channel to Madagascar, following Madagascar's isolation from both Africa and India. And quite interestingly, there are a number of examples of long range colonization events, as we've discussed, those blue pigeons, for example. So let's have a look at the endemic bird families of Madagascar, beginning with one of my absolute favorite groups, and that's the mesites. The mesites are a small family of group endemic to Madagascar, representing a fascinating example of avian evolution on the island. Their ancestral origins trace back to an ancient lineage of birds within the clade meta-aves, which is just a fancy way of saying they're closely related to sandgrouse and the pigeons and doves. Genetic studies suggest that mesites likely arrived on Madagascar via overwater dispersal from Africa or from one of the other Gondwanaland regions several million years ago, rather than evolving directly from species that were already present on the Madagascan landmass. Their dispersal likely occurred during the late Cretaceous or earlier Paleogene, and if you travel with Nigel, I'm sure he'll have a lot to tell you about each of these two periods. But this was a period when Madagascar had already separated from mainland Africa, and this has led to the mesites' long isolation. Over time, they adapted to the island's unique ecosystems, evolving traits such as an exclusively terrestrial lifestyle, an omnivorous diet, which allows them to exploit various forest floor niches. Today, their restricted distribution and unique evolutionary history make the mesites one of the iconic symbols of Madagascar's exceptional biodiversity. One of the more popular groups of one of the more popular bird families on Madagascar, certainly on our tours, are the ground rollers. And these birds have long been considered to be part of a broad group of birds that also include the African and Australasian true rollers. And both morphological and recent genetic evidence supports this relationship. This clade of two families is in turn most related to the kingfishers, toadies, and motmots. Their dispersal onto Madagascar coincided with Madagascar's extended isolation, allowing the ground rollers to evolve into highly specialized ground dwelling birds, as their name suggests. They are particularly unique for their ground nesting and burrowing habits. Over time, they've adapted to the island's diverse habitats from spiny forest to rainforest, resulting in 5 extant species. Now, 4 of these species are largely terrestrial in nature, and one species seen in the lower left-hand side of this panel, lower left-hand panel of this slide, the short-legged ground roller, is the only strictly arboreal species, though like the other members of this family, it does nest underground. Their underground nesting behavior is also quite unique and is likely related to the scarcity of predators on the island of Madagascar. And we'll discuss that more in a few slides' time. Now, to just briefly showcase one of the other species of ground roller, these are all absolutely lovely birds, quite colorful. This is the scaly ground roller. I managed to capture this image on my most recent tour of Madagascar, and this was actually an adult bird attending its nest burrow. So that hole that
Oh,
you can see just
they're
beyond.
stunning, aren't they, Dan? How many of those do you see on a normal trip of the ground rollers? How many species did
That's a
you
very
see?
good question, Nigel. Thanks for raising that. So we have excellent chances of seeing all of the ground rollers on a standard trip of Madagascar.
Wow.
We do run shorter tours to Madagascar that exclude uh, sometimes one of the sites in the south. And if I just jump back to the previous slide, the bird at the top here is the long-tailed ground roller. It's by far the most restricted in its distribution. And one of our shorter tours does not cover that site in the south. So on a standard tour, we do have chances to see all 5 species, but it is important to recognize that long-tailed ground roller is extremely range restricted, and you need to get to a very remote site to try and see that particular species.
But
But we
not Nigel and Nigel are going to that site, aren't they? That's the
Nigel and Nigel are absolutely going to that site. We certainly, it's one of
fantastic.
Madagascar's best birds. We absolutely wouldn't send you there without giving you the chance
Yeah,
to catch up with it.
yeah, fabulous.
I have to also say that the local guides in Madagascar are among the best local guides that I've worked with anywhere in the world. Most of them are reformed hunters, which speaks so much to the incredible conservation efforts that are currently happening in Madagascar. And without local guides, you couldn't even begin to try and see any of the 5 species of ground roller. So we're very fortunate to be pairing up with some excellent local guides at various sites. And so I think you would have virtually, I always hesitate to use the word guaranteed, but the tour is timed around the absolute best time in which to see ground rollers. So this is
Yeah,
possibly the
fantastic.
most sought after group on the island.
Yeah, no, can't wait to see them. A great photo as well, Dan. Very good
Thank you.
photo. Brilliant, brilliant.
Just to also add, all of these photographs have been taken on previous rock jumper tours. So it also just speaks as to many of the photographs of my own, but it also just speaks to the excellent views that we typically get of these birds. Some of them are shyer than others, but generally you do get your efforts are rewarded with absolutely excellent views of these birds when we eventually track them down. The next endemic group that we're looking at are the asities, and these are a small and vividly colorful group of birds that are entirely restricted to Madagascar, representing just another one of these unique evolutionary lineages. Now, molecular studies suggest that the asities are part of a broad radiation of passerines that originated on the Gondwanaland supercontinent, and their closest relatives are the New Zealand stitchbirds as well as the broadbills, which again just goes to show how long Madagascar has been isolated from these other land masses. The ancestors of the asities, uh, like the families we've covered before, have likely reached Madagascar via overwater dispersal, as there's no historic evidence of these birds occurring when Madagascar split off from the Gondwanaland supercontinent. So we think that they arrived on the Madagascan subcontinent, if you will, 55 to 33 million years ago. Isolated on the island, they've adapted to Madagascar's specific ecological conditions, evolving into highly specialized frugivorous and insectivorous birds that thrive within the island's forests in particular. The family now comprises four absolute jewel-like species. These are stunning, stunning birds, and they're known for their vibrant plumage as well as the striking skin ornaments that appear during the breeding season. And here are images of schlegels, velvet, and common sunbird asities, and you can see just how bright those skin ornaments tend to get. Asities additionally have a unique lek polygamous mating system, not too dissimilar from manakins of South America, which basically means that the males come together and they perform displays nowhere near as elaborate as the mannequins in South America, but the males come together, and certainly these facial wattles will have something to do with sexual selection, and that's why they are adorned so elaborately. By direct contrast, possibly the plainest group of all are the endemic Bernieridae or Malagasy warblers. Now, molecular studies indicate that they are part of a larger warbler superfamily, with their closest relatives being Old World warblers of Africa. The ancestors of the Malagasy warblers again likely colonized the island through overwater dispersal from mainland Africa much more recently than other groups, roughly 10 to 20 million years ago. And this is particularly interesting. Once on Madagascar, these birds have undergone extremely rapid adaptive radiation, diversing into a variety of ecological niches. This has resulted in a group with a broad range of foraging habits, from birds that behave much like nuthatches to the long-billed Berniaria, which uses its long bill as something of a probe. But they also have diverse plumage and occupy different habitats, ranging from forest understory specialists to canopy dwellers. The family now comprises several genera, including well-known species such as the spectacled tetrarcha and the cryptic warbler. Interestingly, this group has evolved into far more genera than any of the other endemic bird families, despite being the bird family that arrived most recently on Madagascar. So, being a rather plain group, it really is an incredibly interesting bird, or an interesting group of birds. And in particular, I'd like to highlight the species at the top of the slide, the Appert's tetrarcha, which is one of the most localized of all birds in the world, restricted to just two small forest patches.
Do we see that one, Dan?
You will have a chance of seeing that, absolutely. On the long drive, as you travel from the south of Madagascar through the central parts, you will stop in one of those forests and you have an excellent chance of seeing that particular bird. It's a fascinating forest.
Yeah, people have contacted me about the long drives, but I think, as you say, you break up the long drives with seeing very special birds and creatures like that, don't you? So it won't feel like a long drive. It's going to be fabulous.
Absolutely, Nigel. You raise another very valid point there, that the travel times in Madagascar are quite long, longer than we do see in a number of other destinations that we visit. But it's important to recognize that Madagascar is still developing in nature. So road infrastructure, for example, isn't quite as good as we see in some other destinations around the world. Additionally, I understand that Madagascar was quite recently hit by a large cyclone, which has further deteriorated the road infrastructure in a few core areas. But we do consciously build that into the itinerary. So we ensure that the itinerary is broken up with suitable birding stops, that we are balancing travel times with birding throughout, and it works into an incredible blend of an itinerary. And you do see some absolutely exceptional birds and mammals, as we will soon discuss on this particular tour.
And landscapes, of course, on the
And,
drives.
and landscapes, for sure.
It's nice
Um,
to get a feel of the country, so that's fabulous.
Indeed so. And some of the endemics, things like Malagasy harrier, Madagascan partridge, these have become quite rare birds in recent years. And your best opportunities for seeing those birds is on the longer drives when we are covering large areas of ground. So I always try and reassure people that although we do have longer travel days, it certainly isn't time wasted. The scenery in Madagascar is absolutely spectacular. The birding is excellent. And it's on those longer drives that we do have chance of adding some of the rarer birds on the tour to our list. So absolutely not time wasted. On to the next near endemic bird family, then, and this is the cuckoo roller. This is a fascinating bird. It's completely unique and enigmatic, and it's entirely restricted to Madagascar as well as the four islands of the Comores. It represents its own monotypic bird family, meaning this family, the excuse my pronunciation there, Leptosomidae, consists of only a single species, although there are three recognized subspecies, two of which occur on the Comores, and these potentially are highly distinct subspecies that may warrant future species recognition. One of these subspecies occurs on Madagascar. It's the largest by far. The Comores populations are considerably smaller and they differ somewhat in the iridescence in their plumage. The evolutionary history of the cuckoo rollers traces back to yet another ancient lineage, quite similar to the ground rollers, making this bird distantly related to the rollers, kingfishers, motmots, and bee eaters. Being isolated on the island, the cuckoo roller has since evolved into a highly specialized top predator of forest canopies. And these birds feed primarily on large insects, reptiles, but they will even take other small vertebrates, including some of the small lemurs. So, a really, really fascinating group of birds on the island. Its
This
distinctive appearance.
Dan, sorry, this is why it's so exciting listening to you. Leptosomidae, lots of birders now, or people that love mammals, have decided that they can't see all 10,000 species of birds, but they've got a good chance of seeing all the bird families in the world. There's a lot of family chasers now.
Absolutely.
And you have to go to Madagascar to see some of those very important families. So for me, I've realised I'm not going to see all over 10,000 species of birds before I die, but I hope to see all of the families of birds, and Madagascar is vital to do that. And there's certainly spectacular families, as you're showing us now. Brilliant stuff.
Absolutely, Nigel. So, yet another absolutely incredible point. So, all of the previous bird families that we have covered are totally endemic to Madagascar. The two near endemic families are shared between Madagascar and the Comores. And doubling back to my comments a few minutes ago about the infrastructure within Madagascar, the infrastructure within Madagascar is far superior to the infrastructure in the Comores. So, the easiest way by a long shot of seeing the two near endemic bird families, the cuckoo roller and the vangas, which I'll introduce to you in a few moments' time, is to visit Madagascar. On all of our itineraries to Madagascar, we make a special effort of seeing all of the, at least representatives of all of the endemic and all of the near endemic bird families. And I don't think we've ever run a tour where we have missed one of the bird families. Some of them
Wow.
are harder than others, but we've got an unbeaten track record in terms of seeing these endemic and near endemic bird families. We know that they are a primary reason people visit Madagascar, and they are a core focus of the tours, which is why I decided to showcase these groups in tonight's webinar. Of course, you don't have opportunities to see all representatives of all endemic bird families, but you certainly do stand a chance of seeing one or more of the endemic bird families. The mesites, for example, the main tour that we do does offer chances for all three species, but some of our shorter itineraries will only focus on one or two of those species because they do occur in different areas of the island.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. With all of Rock Jumper's experience, as I say, there's no guarantees, but what you're saying is on all of the tours, you've never missed seeing a representative of all the endemic bird families, which is an amazing hook for people to go to Madagascar.
Absolutely. And I would strongly hesitate to throw the word guarantee out. I never ever would like to guarantee anything on a tour. But on a scheduled departure tour, like some of the tours we'll be introducing in a few moments' time, I would go so far as to guarantee representatives of all of the endemic bird families. We do
Yeah.
have excellent chances of seeing them. Um, the views do vary of some of the birds, but we will see representatives of each of the endemic as well as the near endemic bird families. It
Yeah,
is
no,
um, absolutely
that's
brilliant
terrific.
in that sense.
Terrific stuff.
Finally, then, I'm going to introduce you to the vangas. Now, the vangas are another one of my favorite groups, and they are a striking example of adaptive radiation. So it's quite fitting that we're ending the birding component on this particular group of birds. The vangas are entirely endemic to Madagascar, but one species occurs on the Comores, and they're perhaps the best example, the best of the region's. Sorry, they are perhaps the best example of the region's exceptional biodiversity, showcasing remarkable evolutionary diversification, and they've radiated into a wide range of different ecological niches. Now, compare the three birds here that I've introduced. All three of these birds, the helmet, sickle-billed, and Crossley's vangas, they are all true vangas, and yet Crossley's vanga is entirely restricted to the forest floor. Sickle-billed vanga has that incredible long, thin probe-like beak, and then the helmet vanga is just absolutely mesmerizing when you see it. It's almost crow-sized. It's a massive, massive bird with this almost fluorescent blue bill.
I saw those in a bird book when I was a little boy, and it's been a lifelong dream to see them. It's worth going to Madagascar just to see those three birds. I mean, they are extraordinary, and I say
Absolutely.
it's a lifelong dream for me to see them, and I can't wait. It's going to be fantastic.
We're so excited to get you there, Nigel. So the long isolation of the vangas has resulted in this incredible range of ecological niches. They exhibit an extraordinary range of form, size, and feeding strategies. Again, simply comparing three of the 21 species in this particular slide. From the sickle-billed vanga, which has this incredibly long probe-like beak, to the frugivorous nuthatch vanga, the highly predatory helmet vanga, they just are one of the most awesome groups of birds out there. Today, the family comprises over 21 different species, many of which have striking plumage and distinctive bill shapes that reflect their specialized diets as well as the habitats that they occupy. They are part of a broader superfamily dating back and are related to the Asian and African bush shrikes as well as the helmet shrikes. And you can see some level of relatedness with some of the species with these groups. Once the ancestral species arrived in Madagascar, the vangas underwent rapid evolution, and the group is now widely considered as a textbook example of evolution in isolation, paralleling similar radiations to the Darwin finches. And I say again, just what an incredible experience or opportunity it might have been for Charles Darwin if he traveled to Madagascar as opposed to the Galapagos. The vangas exhibit a far greater variation in morphology and plumage than the Galapagos finches do. However, the vanga's dependence on Madagascar's forests, as is the case for all of the other endemic and near endemic families, makes these species particularly vulnerable to habitat destruction, highlighting the urgent need for conservation on the island of Madagascar. And we'll touch on that a little bit in a few moments' time. I thought then to briefly introduce some of the other core groups on the island. And the first group I'd like to introduce to you are the koas. Now, these are the ground-dwelling cuckoos. Most of the koas are ground-dwelling. There are a number of arboreal species, and all of the koas have these electric, colorful areas of bare skin on the faces. I like to nickname these the drag queens of the bird world. They really are absolutely brilliant in their plumage. This particular bird is the giant koa. It's the largest of the group. It's about chicken sized with a long extended tail, and that the color in the face really has to be seen to be believed. The next bird I'd like to introduce you to is the white-browed owl in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. The white-browed owl is a particularly interesting bird. It's part of the same genus as the little spotted forest owls, just to name some of the other related birds, which are primarily Eurasian in their distribution. So this, again, is one of these suggestions of long-range colonization events and is one of a few owls that we have a chance of seeing in Madagascar. There is one species that is particularly rare on the island, but all of the other owls we have a pretty much surety of seeing. So some fantastic owls to see. I particularly love the phodies, which are small jewel-like birds, possibly one of the most common birds on the island. This is the bird in the lower left-hand corner here. Red phody, if any of you have visited any of the Indian Ocean islands, I'm sure you would have seen red phody. It's native to Madagascar, but has been widely introduced across the Seychelles, the Comores, Mauritius, Reunion, and some of the other islands. But this is a bird that we see almost throughout. And a really, really brilliant bird when you see it. It's almost iridescent orange in its plumage, quite reminiscent of the bishops in Africa. And then finally, we have the collared nightjar, which is a bit of an enigma within Madagascar. It's one of the least known nightjars in the world. The call of this bird is currently undescribed, but it's an absolute brilliant bird. Once again, the local guides are imperative to finding this particular bird. And what I find especially brilliant about this particular species is when you see them, they normally huddle so closely together that in this image, we've got two individual birds that are huddled so close together that their plumage almost morphs into a single shape. They're just absolutely fantastic. We do have a very, very good chance of seeing this bird on the tour. Now, it would be a complete injustice to talk about Madagascar if I didn't also highlight the incredible mammals, and I'd like to pay special attention, mention, sorry, and I'd like to mention that we pay special attention to all other forms of biodiversity in addition to birds on all of our tours on Madagascar. So it's not a birding tour, it's strictly a wildlife tour. We spend as much time looking at birds as we do as mammals. Mammals don't detract from birds, as vice versa. It really is a complete celebration of biodiversity. And for the purposes of today's webinar, I thought to highlight in particular the lemurs, which are arguably the most charismatic of all of Madagascar's mammals. They're not strictly the only mammals on Madagascar, but they're certainly the animals that we spend the most time with, and they're the most visible animals on the island. There are a number of carnivores, for example, which are very, very difficult to see on Madagascar. Now, recent estimates suggest that there are over 110 recognized species of lemur in Madagascar, though the exact number varies due to ongoing taxonomic revisions and new discoveries. And new discoveries are still being made every day within Madagascar, which is part of why this island is so incredibly exciting. Principally, the lemurs are primates, and there are five major families, all of which are totally endemic to Madagascar. Some have been introduced to the Comores. But for the purposes of today's webinar, I've broken the lemurs down into a few other groups that I'd like to briefly introduce you to today. And we'll begin with the true lemurs. Now, the true lemurs are the most familiar, easy lemurs to see on the island. They are medium to large diurnal lemurs, meaning they're active by day, and they're all incredibly social by nature. So you see them in large groups. They're all quite vocal to one another. They make incredibly cute sounds. And they're very, very tame and quite familiar animals. On more than one occasion, I've had one of these lemurs hop onto my shoulder, which is quite a neat experience. Some of these lemurs are extremely highly specialized, and in particular, I'd like to highlight the bamboo lemurs, which fall into the true lemur group. There are a number of bamboo lemurs, and as the name suggests, they are strictly associated with bamboo. Bamboo, if you did not know, naturally produces cyanide, and the golden brown bamboo lemur ingests enough cyanide within its individual lifetime that could kill a human. So these animals have developed a unique strategy to break down those cyanide molecules, and they're able to occupy this unique niche that no other animal on Madagascar has been able to occupy. So fascinating animals, really. On a typical tour of Madagascar, we expect to see up to 9 species of true lemur. So again, we really do have excellent chances, in addition to seeing as many of the birds as possible, to also spending valuable time with the lemurs. And we stand chances of seeing things like the ring-tailed lemur, which is possibly the most famous of all of the lemurs, forever immortalized by the animated movies, as well as the common brown and red-fronted brown lemurs. These are incredibly gentle animals. As I mentioned, I have had completely wild lemurs jump on my shoulder before, and there's absolutely no risk to oneself at all. They're just incredibly familiar, friendly creatures, and it really is a delight to spend some time with them. I'm going to take a quick interlude here and just mention that in a few slides' time, I will be playing a short sound clip. So if I would encourage you all just to, at this point, turn up your volume. It really is one of the highlights of Madagascar that I will be playing for you in a few slides' time, and I don't want you to miss it when I get there. The next group of lemurs are the dwarf and the mouse lemurs. Now, comparatively so, these are a relatively small to medium sized nocturnal group of lemurs that, by comparison, are also generally solitary in nature. And interestingly, this group includes the world's smallest primate, which is Madame Berth's mouse lemur. Unfortunately, we don't go to the site where we stand a chance at seeing Madame Berth's mouse lemur. It weighs in at just around 33 grams, so really a minute creature. But the animal on the lower right-hand side of this image is the gray-brown mouse lemur. Sorry, golden brown mouse lemur. There's several species of mouse lemur, but the golden brown mouse lemur is, in addition, one of the smallest or smallest primates in the world, and it's among one of the smallest of the mouse lemurs. Again, on a standard tour, we expect to see up to 9 different species of mouse lemur or mouse and dwarf lemur, and this
Wow.
includes the golden brown mouse lemur, which I've just highlighted, the gray mouse lemur, which is one of the most localized of the mouse lemurs, as well as the fat-tailed dwarf lemur. Now, I always wonder what the fat-tailed dwarf lemur would think if it knew that that's what it's been named, but that is the name of the fat-tailed dwarf lemur. And all three of these species are represented on this slide. So the golden brown mouse lemur on the lower right, the gray mouse lemur on the lower left, and the fat-tailed dwarf lemur on the upper part of this image.
Dan,
Just
what would we expect from our nocturnal safaris looking for owls and these mouse lemurs and dwarf lemurs? Do we need to bring flashlights with us and that sort of equipment, or are they provided?
Again, a wonderful point to raise there, Nigel. So we go on a night safari virtually every night that we are allowed to do so at the sites that we are allowed to walk around after dark. And it's on these night walks, we don't walk particularly far. Typically, only a couple of 100 meters is sufficient. But we go on night walks looking for dwarf and mouse lemurs, which are totally nocturnal by nature. In a few cases, as you can see from the two images of the mouse lemurs here, the local guides do typically know of the tree cavities in which they roost, and you can sometimes see them during the day. But it also is also very neat to see them in the evening. They're very active. They hop around quite quickly, and it's brilliant to go and spend time with them at night. Our night safaris are also the best chance of seeing chameleons, and Nigel will be introducing us to some of the incredible chameleons of Madagascar in a few slides' time. Um, just to also add then that the local guides are absolutely fantastic at locating owls on the on the day roost. So most of the owls we needn't actually look for at night. So our night safaris are strictly around seeing the nocturnal lemurs as well as finding chameleons. Of course, if we do hear an owl and the group are interested in seeing the owl, we'd be more than happy to try and see it. But guests would need to bring their own torches for those nocturnal excursions. A head torch is recommended just to free up your hands. It's not to suggest that the trails and the walking is particularly difficult in Madagascar, but it is always just a good idea to have your hands free that you can lift your binoculars if we do get something in the spotlight. So the night safaris are without a doubt one of the highlights of Madagascar, and as they are optional excursions, but we try and throw in as many of these excursions as we possibly can because Madagascar just becomes another world after dark. There's all manner of critters that come out from the lemurs to chameleons to some amphibians that are best seen after dark. It really is fantastic. The next group of lemurs then are possibly the most iconic, and that is the Indri, which is the largest of all of the extant lemurs, which you can see in the top part of the image here, a huge black and white lemur. They're capable of jumping up to 10 meters in a single leap through the forest canopy. So incredibly strong, absolutely brilliant animals. And then the sifakas, and there's a number of different species of sifakas. As a group, they are all short-tailed lemurs, and they're typically striking in appearance with black and white pelagias or furs. Really, really beautiful animals when you see them. And then some of the sifakas are known for a unique bipedal dancing behavior, as you can see in the case of the Verreaux's sifaka in the lower right-hand image here. This is basically within open forest conditions. Occasionally, they will need to descend, and they've got this incredible way of walking on two legs to get across forest clearings. It really is a special, special experience to see these dancing sifakas. And these are highly inquisitive animals. They not quite as inquisitive as the true lemurs, but I've had sifakas climb down and come to within a meter or two from me to simply check us out on the trail. So
Well, that's wonderful. And how often do you see them dancing, Dan? Do you see them nearly every trip, or is that a rare thing to see, the dancing behaviour?
we see it on virtually every single trip. So, in particular, for the
Fantastic.
Rose Sifaka, we visit a site in the south of Madagascar. And the Sifakas have a daily ritual where they move from the roosting areas to the feeding areas. So we go and we wait in the prime position where we know that they have to cross a gap, and it's simply a case of waiting for them, and inevitably they will come and they will cross the gap doing this incredible dancing behavior. They're really, really special special animals. And we expect to see up to 8 different species on a tour, including the Indri, which, of course, as I mentioned, is the largest. But then we have chance of seeing 3, possibly 4 sifakas, including the endangered diadem sifaka, which is often considered to be the most beautiful of all lemurs, as well as both Varro's and Corkle sifakas. And then we have a chance at both woolly lemurs as well, the eastern and the western woolly lemurs. Now, at this point, I'd like to just share a brief personal anecdote. Now, a few years ago, I was incredibly fortunate to meet Sir David Attenborough. I had the opportunity of sitting down and having a cup of coffee with him, and I had the opportunity to ask him, as the person who's arguably seen more of the world than any other living person, what is the one experience that he wishes he could relive? And he mentioned seeing and spending time with the Indri in Madagascar. And I thought, of all of the things that such an incredible man has seen, it seems like an unusual choice. And then I had the opportunity of traveling to Madagascar and spending time with the Indri myself. And it really is, I have no other phrasing for it, but the fact that it's a spiritual experience to spend time with these animals. And a big part of that is their incredible mode of communication. So we venture into these incredibly rich and productive forests, and the Indri tend to sing to one another in the early mornings. And I have an incredible sound clip that I'd like to play with you, just a few seconds of the sound clip, but a recording of Indri that I took on one of my previous tours of Madagascar that I'd love to share with you. An incredible, incredible sound. They sound like humpbacked whales. And when you have different family groups singing back and forth to one another, it's an incredible echo, and it is such an incredible experience spending time with these animals. Just to also mention that we do have a dedicated excursion to go out and see and spend time with the Indri. And generally, they're incredibly charismatic animals. So we do spend some valuable, precious moments with these animals. It's typically quite early on in the tour, so we kick things off with a bang, and just absolutely, absolutely brilliant, brilliant creatures. On to our next group of mammals, then, and that is the sportive lemurs. Now, these are medium sized, strictly nocturnal lemurs. These are interesting animals in that we typically see them roosting in tree cavities. We don't often see them sitting out on exposed limbs like in the upper image here. And they're absolute delights to spend time with. Being nocturnal, they're often, as you can see in the image here, they perform these incredibly tiresome yawns, and they're quite special to see. Typically, again, the local guides do know of day roosting sites for the sportive lemurs, and we have excellent chances of seeing them. They are highly agile by nature and extremely vocal at night, and we also often do hear them around our chalets in the evening. The standard of accommodation, just to add very briefly, is excellent throughout Madagascar. And in the evenings when we retire, you normally can hear the sportive lemurs rummaging around in the trees above your chalets. They feed primarily on tree foliage, and they've got specialized digestive systems that have allowed them to occupy this niche of feeding primarily on foliage. And a number of species do occur within dry habitats as well, so down in the spiny forests areas. On a standard tour, We do expect to see up to 7 different species of sportive lemur, including the small-toothed hubbards and weasel sportive lemurs. So we do have excellent chances of seeing various different sportive lemurs at different sites across the tour.
But Dan, of
Yes,
course, this one with Nigel and Nigel is not a standard tour. So this is a very special tour, isn't it? So
it is
I
indeed.
know
We've
it is, and
curated.
we're gonna have excellent fun, and also have a lot of talks about. That's great. Your David Attenborough anecdote. I mean, it must be brilliant to go in his footsteps and see one of the wildlife highlights of his life. So I'm sure it will be one of the wildlife highlights of mine and anyone that comes on the tour as well. So, but this is a special one. This is the first of maybe more collaborations between me and Rock Jumper where we can, do some very special things.
That's brilliant, Nigel, and absolutely, we've curated a very special itinerary for Nigel and Nigel's tour of Madagascar later this year. It differs from our scheduled tour of Madagascar in a number of ways. We are visiting all of the key areas, the key biodiversity areas, and in particular, there's a really exciting opportunity to travel to some rarely visited parts of northern Madagascar, which come with some incredibly exciting birds that we don't see on our scheduled tour. But in addition to that, a number of mammals that we don't typically see on our scheduled tours. So this really is a special opportunity to travel with Nigel and Nigel Redman, our tour leader, and an opportunity to not only see Madagascar's breathtaking wildlife and landscapes, but an opportunity to get to some areas that we don't normally travel to on our scheduled tours. We've included special sites around some species that Nigel was absolutely fascinated with trying to include and trying to see. So the second from last group of lemurs then is the ruffed lemurs. Now this is a highly specialized and incredibly beautiful group of lemurs. They're all quite patterned in nature. They have prehensile tails that they can sometimes use to cling on to limbs, and black and white ruffed lemur in particular, you often see them hanging upside down, and they're quite special in that regard. They're known for their extremely loud calls. These are strictly forest dwelling species, and the loud calls similar to the Indri. And I really do encourage you to go and listen to the sounds of the Indri after this, because it really is, and it's a beautiful sound. The ruffed lemurs less so; it's more raucous dog-like barking, but these loud calls are quite characteristic of forest dwelling lemurs, just being within denser environments. On a standard tour, we can expect to see one particular species of ruffed lemur, the black and white ruffed lemur, which you see in the lower left-hand panel. The other species I've included here, the red ruffed lemur, occurs in a very localized part of northeastern Madagascar. So, unfortunately, it's an area that's very difficult to get to. But I thought just to include the two species side by side here. And then finally, the last lemur that I'd like to introduce you to is possibly the most unique of all, and that is the eye. Now, I'm sure you've all seen video clips of the eye. They have a totally unique feeding behavior. They've got an elongated central finger, middle finger, that they use as a probe to pick out grubs and insects from tree cavities. This is a strictly nocturnal and an incredibly unique lemur. And as I mentioned, it has this incredibly highly specialized feeding behavior. It's the only lemur. It's the only lemur, in fact, the only mammal in the world that has this incredibly unique feeding behavior. Unfortunately, it is a very difficult lemur to see. They do occur within some of the sites that we visit and will be visiting on our tours with Nigel Marven. But unfortunately, they are exceedingly rare to see. Having said that, we have run several tailor-made excursions specifically centered around seeing eye, and there are some very, very good areas to see them. So, if anyone is interested in traveling to Madagascar, and eye is an absolute essential, we can certainly make arrangements to get you to the core areas for this incredible mammal.
Yeah, and if some of you, that's one I would like to see, of course. So Dan and I were speaking about it before this webinar. If any of you would like to see it, please mention that to Dan and his team when you do your booking, and we could go and see it together, do an extension for 3 or 4 days at the end of the main tour and go and see eye. So, you know, that's obviously one of on everyone's list of mammals to see the eye. So if you'd like to join me and the Rock Jumper team to see those, mention it to Dan, and maybe we can sort something out, because it's a fantastic animal, isn't it? That, I mean, it really is. Dan, you've seen it. You've seen it, presumably.
I have to admit, in 5 trips to Madagascar, I have not seen an eye, but the disclaimer there is I haven't been to the core areas for eye. So,
No.
while I have seen most of the other lemurs and most of the endemic birds to Madagascar, I unfortunately have not had the opportunity to go and see. So, who knows, Nigel? I might come out and join you on a dedicated extension to see eye, and that's very easily arranged from our side. We could very easily put that together. And Nigel, perhaps at this point, I think I would like to hand over to you. You are our herp specialist, so could you please walk us through some of the incredible reptiles that you're looking forward to seeing in Madagascar?
Yeah, yeah. And
Some of the other highlights.
I did a post today to, I'm a lover of chameleons and have a pet one, a Yemen chameleon, a cast chameleon. They come from the Middle East, obviously bred in captivity. Reptiles, if you keep reptiles, they should never be taken from the wild. But of course, the chameleon capital of the world is Madagascar. There's over 100 species, half of the world's species, and they range in size from tiny chameleons where you have to crawl on your hands and knees and look in leaf litter for them, which I'll be doing if the local guides know of a place where you can see the smallest chameleon in the world, Brooksia. There's one in the top left-hand picture. And then, of course, they go from tiny to huge. So the bottom right, and another great picture taken by Daniel on a night safari. As he said earlier, that's the best time to see chameleons. They're sleeping at the ends of branches. They really stand out in torchlight, so you can see them there. That's Oosterlot's chameleon, which is the largest chameleon in the world. So I'm very excited about the chameleons as much as I am about the fabulous birds and the lemurs. The top picture there is a Phelsuma, one of the day geckos. Again, that's one, not the Madagascar species, but some of the other species are popular in captivity. So it'd be nice to see that in its native habitat. And the one below is a mossy leaf-tailed gecko, another unique reptile to Madagascar. I'm hoping, of course, as always, to find some snakes. Sanzinia is a Madagascar speciality, a constricting snake. I don't believe there's any venomous snakes there, or there's not any that couldn't cause problems to us on our tour. So the reptiles are as fabulous as everything else. And of course, the invertebrates. Daniel's again taken some great photos of invertebrates. And the one on the left, flattened leaf bugs. Again, I've seen them in a wildlife documentary, but never seen them in the flesh. On most of the tours, I've been told, because I asked specifically about this, and we'll look for it, is the giraffe-necked weevil. Look at that creature on the bottom left, a wonderful insect, a great beetle there. And of course, the top one there is the comet moth, which is fantastic. And the lower one, cockroaches, makes everyone's skin crawl, but not the cockroaches that live in the forest. That's a giant hissing cockroach. Again, some of those are kept as pets, and they're very clean. They wouldn't come into our hotels or accommodation. You only find them in the forest, and they're so clean. I've even had one in my mouth for a documentary that I did to show how that cockroaches aren't all bad. I don't like American cockroaches if I see them in hotels in tropical countries, but hissing cockroaches are fabulous. Madagascar, endemic, and I hope we see them. That would be fantastic. And if you're there, maybe you can get a video of me putting one in my mouth. Again, I'll relive the moment from the documentary. But it's just awe-inspiring, all of the things that Daniel's described and all the other things that we could see on our trip. And I say Nigel Redman is one of the world's great enthusiasts like I am. So you'll certainly be with a wonderful group of people on the tour, and seeing some of these, mouth-watering creatures. It's a fabulous destination, and one I've always wanted to go to.
That's absolutely wonderful, Nigel. Thank you. And as I mentioned previously, we really do try and showcase as much biodiversity as possible in Madagascar. And this doesn't detract at all from the birding. We have equal chances of seeing all of the birds as we do the mammals and these other highlights. But given the fact that more than 90% of all life forms on Madagascar can be found nowhere else on Earth, we really do try and show you as much as we possibly can, be it a unique insect or a fascinating reptile, a wonderful amphibian, the endemic birds, of course, and the mammals. We really do try and show you as much as possible. I know Nigel Redman is as passionate about all of these other life forms as Nigel Marven. So this really is going to be an incredibly exciting opportunity to travel with two of the greats. And I think it is certainly an incredibly valuable experience. Onto then the various sites that one would need to visit in Madagascar. Now, rather than focusing on the core areas within or the core locations that you would need to visit, what we typically try and do is spend time across several sites that cover the main eco zones within the island. So, spending several times in the moist zone, the dry zone, visiting the spiny forests of the south, and then also spending some time in the remote mangrove forests and large estuaries, as well as visiting a number of offshore islets. And across different sites, you do have chances of seeing different species, but by spending multiple days in at different sites within the various forested areas or dry areas, we have chance of seeing a number of different key endemic. We have chance of seeing as many of the endemics as we possibly can. And we do typically yield in the region of about 85 to 90% of all of the endemic birds on a single trip to Madagascar. It will be more so on Nigel and Nigel's tour of Madagascar, in that we'll be covering some sites right up in the north of the country that are rarely visited on a scheduled departure tour. So, looking at these various habitats, your first impression of Madagascar will be a extremely human impacted view. This particular image was taken just outside of the capital of Antananarivo, and you can see most of the waterways have been dammed up into extensive rice paddies. Most of the ridges have been cleared for other agricultural purposes, and this is a common theme and a primary threat that's facing Madagascar's key wildlife. But of course, there are birds to be seen in these areas. The wetlands provide excellent opportunities, for example, for seeing the endangered Malagasy pond heron, but we do also look in these areas for things like the familiar red fody, the Madagascan wagtail, and we constantly watching overhead for raptors such as the Madagascar buzzard here. We quite quickly try and get out to the eastern rainforest zone, and as I mentioned, it is rainforest. It is very wet. There is risk of rain, but we are typically quite unimpacted by the rain in Madagascar. We might have a bit of rain in the afternoon, but we can normally squeeze out the most valuable hours of the day to go birding, and generally we do catch up with most of the targets we're looking for. So within the rainforest, here we will in particular focus on seeing ground rollers. Four of the five species of ground roller can be found within this habitat. We also have dedicated excursions to go and spend time with the Indri within these rainforest zones. But then there is much, much, much to see in terms of the other endemic birds. But also within these areas, we have an extremely high diversity of plants, reptiles, amphibians, and insects that we try and showcase. And all of the species that you see on the slide here are species that you do have a really good chance of seeing on a standard tour. That little frog, for example, the Barron's mantella, the local guides typically know of hatch sites for the Barron's mantella. They're incredibly vivid in color, quite like the poison dart frogs. They aren't poisonous like the poison dart frogs are. And just to echo something that Nigel had said previously, there are a number of snakes. We do have of seeing a number of snakes, but there are no venomous snakes on Madagascar. So none of the snakes that we expect to see are of any concern in terms of stepping on them or anything like that. So we do spend some time with them. There's some really special snakes in Madagascar, leaf nose snakes, for example, but none of them present any risks. We do then spend some time down in the spiny forests, and this area is not the most speciose, but it offers some excellent opportunities for some of the most range restricted birds in Madagascar. For example, the long-tailed ground roller and the subdesert mesite. But it's also within this habitat that it's a completely alien-like habitat. Some really, really interesting plants. There's some fascinating baobabs, as you can see. And it's within this habitat that we also look for a number of mouse lemurs and sportive lemurs. We stand a chance of seeing Madagascar hissing cockroach. There's also a really interesting little reptile that we look for called a three-eyed gecko that has a false eye on the top of its head. So some fascinating species within this habitat in particular. We then move across to the dry deciduous forest. Now, this particular habitat shot looks deceivingly moist. This is an especially dry and crunchy forest. It crunches under your foot. This is within the flourish season when the trees come out in new leaf. But if you were to go a few weeks earlier, this forest would be completely devoid of leaves and totally dry by comparison to the rainforests. And this habitat supports some of the most incredible and incredibly sought after birds and animals on the island. Things like your giant koa, your ring-tailed lemurs. Up in the north, we visit a site for the rare Schlegel's asity, which is restricted to just a few areas, and we do have really good chances of seeing that. We often within this habitat find day roosting scops owls, rainforest or Torotoroko scops owls. Coincidentally, they've now been lumped, but they are quite distinctive in their habitat requirements. And then finally, it's within this habitat that we stand our best chance at seeing the very recently described golden brown mouse lemur. As I mentioned, we do spend some time in some mangrove and estuary habitats as well as offshore islands, and these areas present the best opportunities for the critically endangered Madagascar fish eagle, the threatened Humboldt heron, as well as the monotypic crab plover. Again, one of these really sought after bird families that Nigel was referring to. This is a bird with its own bird family. We do have very, very good chances of seeing the crab plover, particularly off the south of Madagascar. And coincidentally, there we go out and visit a nesting colony of the red-tailed tropic bird, which is quite a special experience. For those who would be interested in diving and snorkeling opportunities, I would like to also mention that these areas in the south of Madagascar also do present opportunities for diving and snorkeling. So again, it's a complete celebration of diversity, both on land as well as in the sea. Now, onto a slightly more somber note. Before my first visit to Madagascar, I remember one of my ornithology professors telling me that Madagascar was one of these absolute must visit soon destinations, and that habitat loss would wipe out countless endemics within about the next decade or so. Well, that was back in about 2014. Since then, I've had the incredible privilege of traveling to Madagascar on 5 separate occasions. And while the extent of habitat destruction is evident, and you can firsthand see habitat loss, I have to admit that my view of traveling to Madagascar is far less pessimistic, and the state of Madagascar's birds seems to be improving somewhat. Nevertheless, I must admit that many of Madagascar's birds have an unfavorable conservation status, and this is due to high and very high levels of pressure that are being placed, particularly by anthropogenic threats, on their populations. The unfortunate part of this tale is that conservation remains a relatively low priority in Madagascar, and yet its birds continue to be subjected to incredible anthropogenic stresses. Most of the threats that are facing Madagascar's birds are indeed anthropogenic in nature, as you can clearly see here. These are direct extracts from a report that was simply titled The State of Madagascar's Birds. And you can see the key threats here to Madagascar's birds are agriculture, logging, hunting and trapping, climate change, invasive species, pollution, human disturbance, and the list goes on. But as I mentioned, it has really, really been quite encouraging to see a complete perception change. And many of the local guides that we work with, for example, are reformed hunters. They are absolutely key to finding some of these birds. And Nigel will share some thoughts briefly on the importance of AV tourism, ecotourism in Madagascar, and how that is doing wondrous things to try and conserve Madagascar's birds.
Yeah, as Dan said, I mean, people say to me, "Why are you going to Madagascar? It must be so depressing because the habitats are being destroyed." And as Dan says, that's true. But now the government are starting to put aside protected areas, and one of the reasons for that is because of eco-tourists coming to see lemurs and birds and the chameleons. So we don't want to blow our own trumpets, but eco-tourists in this sort of country really do help because the local people see that there's revenue coming to the hotels, the guides are being paid. Of course, we're affecting climate change by flying there, but we can do things to mitigate that. And I actually think that by going there, we're actually helping to protect those forests because people realise the value that they have. The Malagasy government haven't been told to protect these areas by other governments. They've decided to do it because they're seeing that ecotourism is a very important part of the economy. So that's great. And there are some fabulous good news stories. There's a picture coming up of a fantastic duck. Well, for me personally, I've only got 10 species of duck in the world to see, and I've seen them all. And the Madagascar pochard is one of them. It was a bird that was thought to be extinct. It's an extraordinary pochard, the only one in the group in the world that feeds on insects. Had a lot of problems there with hunting, pollution of the lake where it was found, and the fact happens all over the world. It's happened to the hooded grebe in Argentina. People introduce fish into the exotic fish. They're competing with the pochards for their insects, and some of the fish that have been introduced into Madagascar are so huge that they've even attacked the adult birds. So it was on a hiding to nothing. Then the Durrell Institute came in, the Peregrine Fund, they've bred them in captivity, and now they've been reintroduced into lakes where they've got a good chance of survival. And there's maybe around 100 or so in the wild. And if you come on the tour extension, as I say, there's 2 tours, the main tour where you see all the lemurs and all of those things, but there's also an extension which is extremely exciting. That really is an adventure because we're camping there. Few people visit that area. We'll see the Madagascar pochard and some other specials in the north of Madagascar. You don't have to go on that. You can just do the main tour. But I'd love it if some of you joined Nigel and I on that camping adventure. It's not really hardcore. It's just fantastic because it's taking us to a place where few people have visited, and there's lots of people in the world that want to see the Madagascar pochard, and it's a good news story. That bird is coming back from being thought of as extinct, and the populations are slowly increasing. So wonderful bird to see, and if like me you want to see all the ducks in the world, it's vital to go to that part of northern Madagascar. And the trip coming up, I say there's two trips: the extension and the normal trip. Not the normal trip, the special trip where we see the lemurs and all of those other things. I don't go to Madagascar every year. I won't be going every year. This is the first time for me, and probably I'll go again, but I won't be going that many times. So it's a very special trip. Nigel Redman, look him up. He's written all of the Where to Watch Birds books, even though they were done many years ago. They're a valuable resource to see how many endemic birds and all of those sorts of things in all of the continents on the planet. He's one of the most experienced bird guides on the planet. He's a great friend of mine. We've been to see Irish ladies' tresses and orchid in this country, so I'm really looking forward to bantering with him. But our experience with my filming and his guiding, I mean, we've covered nearly every part of the world, so there'll be lots of great conversation. And of course, I will tell filming stories. If you want to know about how to make wildlife films, if you want to know about how to be a wildlife presenter, come on the trip and I'll help you with that. And maybe we can even do some videos on your phone or camera so you can see how I do my work. But it really is, this is an overused word, but it's a trip of a lifetime to come with me and to come with Nigel Redman to Madagascar. It's an unbeatable experience. It's going to be a tremendous adventure. Lemurs, reptiles, all those wonderful birds. I hope to see some of you in November because it's going to be a truly fabulous trip.
That's absolutely brilliant, Nigel. And we are so excited to be partnering with you. So Nigel kindly introduced the two tours, but just to briefly elaborate on that, we have a Madagascar comprehensive tour, which has been loaded onto our website. And one would simply need to click the book now or inquire now buttons that you can see there. These are direct screenshots off our website, www.rockjumperbirding.com. And you could make your booking or inquiry even while I'm speaking right now, and we would get back to you very soon with specific details about how to formalize your booking. As Nigel has also mentioned, our expert tour leader, Nigel Redman, who's visited Madagascar on several occasions, will be the expert tour leader on the trip. But Nigel Marven will be co-hosting the tour with Nigel Redman on this incredibly exciting joint partnership trip. I do wish to just add, you will see a Madagascar comprehensive tour on our website, different to the Madagascar Marven tour. We have carefully curated an itinerary for Nigel Marven, focusing on some core areas of Madagascar that are seldom visited in on some of our other scheduled tours. We have received a number of bookings on this tour, so spaces are limited, and I do encourage anyone who would like to join Nigel Marven on this incredibly exciting once-in-a-lifetime trip to Madagascar to please book now or inquire now as soon as you possibly can. And as Nigel mentioned, we will also be running a remote Northern Endemics tour where we visit some sites up in the north of the country And this tour is specifically structured around the Madagascar pochard, but additionally offers opportunities for some of Madagascar's rarest endemics, including things like the red owl, the slender-billed flufftail, and even chances for the Madagascar serpent eagle, which is an almost mythical bird. So really an absolutely special opportunity to get to some of these seldom visited areas of Madagascar. And if for whatever reason these dates, the 22nd of October through to the 19th of November this year, do not work for you, we do have a number of spaces remaining on upcoming tours to Madagascar. Spaces are already quite limited, but we do have spaces on our upcoming Madagascar highlights, which is one of our shorter itineraries. Madagascar Highlights 1, which runs in July, has one space remaining. July is an excellent time to visit Madagascar. Temperatures are a little bit cooler at this time, and there's less risk of rain within the eastern rainforest zone. But if you would like to travel later in the year, where we do have increased chances for some of the rainforest birds, once the rains kick in, birds tend to start calling, and this is our best chance for things like the red-breasted koa or the scaly ground roller, which we really do need to. We depend on hearing those birds to have the best chance at seeing them. Then our Madagascar Highlights 2 tour has a number of remaining spaces. And then finally, the only other thing I have to say is a huge, huge thank you to Nigel Marven for sharing his expertise with us this evening. Nigel, it's an absolute pleasure to be partnering with you on this trip. We are so, so excited to get you and your group to Madagascar. This really is an incredible opportunity to travel with you, and we look forward to collaborating with you on this exciting venture. So thank you again for trusting us with this tour and for joining us this evening, sharing your incredible expertise and enthusiasm for Madagascar with us. There are already many, many comments coming back in the webinar chat here. We've got a comment that's just come in. Wonderful webinar, brought back so many great memories for me. I could hear the Indri singing in my head. So thank you again for joining us, Nigel.
And that was from David Attenborough. So that's really good, isn't it? David Attenborough, he's 98 or something now, so that was good news that he's there. No, thanks, Dan. It was great. Your photos are brilliant, and I can't wait to visit, and I can't wait to go with Nigel Redman and Rock Jumper. And I said there's already lots of the places gone. So if people want to join me, they need to do it quite quickly. And I would love to have them along. And obviously, I'll be at the Global Bird Fair doing a couple of presentations in July. I'll go on the Rock Jumper stand as well, so I can meet some of you there. But you'll need to book before then, as otherwise we'll lose the accommodation and the guides in Madagascar. So hopefully you can meet me there and tell me that you'll see me next time in Madagascar.
Absolutely brilliant. Don't run off, Nigel. We do have a number of questions that we will briefly tackle. And the first question, I did refer to it one or two times, but maybe you could answer this question for us if you know. But what does the term super tramp mean, specifically in the context of island biogeography?
I'd never heard the word. I thought you'd made it up, to be honest. So you'll need to explain that.
That's perfect.
I mean, I've heard the word obviously in the band, but not related to island animals.
I love your reference there. But the word super tramp, to answer your question there, Jen, is um, essentially island hopping. So species such as the fantails, the white eyes, the weavers, even owls are absolutely excellent at island hopping. And what we see in the context of island biogeography is that evolution tends to happen quite quickly once birds or any animals have colonized an island. So um, Supertramp refers to the ability of animals to to jump islands and in doing so rapidly evolve into new species. In particular, there is a fantail, a small flycatcher type within the Indonesian islands that is called the supertramp fantail because it's a group that is especially well known for this behavior. Elizabeth then asks, I was wondering which of the mesite family looks like it almost has a sickle bill. Elizabeth, I think you may be confusing there the sickle-billed vanga, which has the impressive black and white vanga with the long sickle bill. The mesites are all quite rail-like in their structure. They creep around on the forest floor. But sickle-billed vanga is an absolutely spectacular bird. I was quite surprised, and I think Nigel will be very surprised as to how big that bird is when you see it in real life. It's far bigger than pictures lead you to believe. It really is a fantastic bird.
That's one not to be missed. So I can't wait to see that one.
Absolutely. And we do have excellent chances at seeing sickle-billed vanga. It occurs within the dry deciduous woodlands and spiny forests. And it's present at a number of sites that we'll be visiting on Nigel and Nigel's tour. So excellent opportunities. The scheduled tours that I also mentioned also do have excellent opportunities for that bird. We are visiting core sites for sickle-billed vanga. Ian then asks, presumably Red Owl needs a personalized tour and isn't seen on the standard itinerary. Yes, Ian. So Red Owl is only really possible up in the extreme north of Madagascar, coincidentally at the same site as the slender-billed flufftail and the Madagascar pochard. Once again, the local guides are absolutely imperative of seeing them, and they typically know of day roosts for red owls. So Nigel's remote northern extension will offer a rare opportunity to go up into those northern parts and see the red owl. Unfortunately, although it is technically possible on the standard route, a bit like it is so rarely seen at the standard sites today that you couldn't count on seeing it. And certainly across 5 personal trips to Madagascar, I haven't come close to seeing red owl. Admittedly, as I mentioned before, I haven't visited the core areas. I haven't been to that site for Madagascar pochard, but you would need to cover those areas for your best chance at seeing red owl. And red owl would be a very good chance up in those sites in the north.
Yeah, what an adventure I mean, it's a terrific extension just to see the red owl, the pochard, and the flufftail. Have a chance with the flufftail. Terrific. There's few people on earth that have been up there, and as I say, it's camping, which adds to the fun really because it makes it more of an adventure. So I hope some of you will join Nigel and me on that one.
Wonderful. And Nigel did mention camping up on the remote northern extension. Just to add that what we do is we go and we stay in the Peregrine Trust camp. So we actively involved with the people who are doing the work on Madagascar pochards. Our presence there is directly contributing to the conservation of those birds. It's by no means detracting in any way from those conservation efforts. By visiting those core areas, we are directly contributing towards the conservation of some of Madagascar's rarest birds. But just to also add that Nigel's comprehensive tour, the main tour, does not include any camping, and any of our scheduled tours to Madagascar do not include any camping anywhere on the itinerary.
Quick question from me, Dan.
Yes.
A practical question. I'm a vegan. That's not a problem, is it, on these tours? Those things can be catered for in Madagascar.
Absolutely. The food standard in Madagascar is incredible, incredibly rich diversity in food throughout the sites that we visit. You will see references to stomach ailments in the past in Madagascar. We have seen over the years that the food hygiene in Madagascar has improved dramatically. And so any of those simple travel related ailments are very few and far between nowadays. We do still recommend brushing teeth and drinking bottled water exclusively, but the risk of any of those stomach-related ailments has reduced compared to 10 years ago, for example.
Yeah, brilliant. And if you're a vegan, it's reduced even more because it's meat eaters that normally get those stomach complaints. But that's
Absolutely.
why that's why India is so good. You never get Delhi belly if you're vegetarian in India.
Absolutely.
Great.
Julie then asks, "What are the pink creatures on the left of that of the colorful moth?" Julie, those are flattered leaf bugs. It's a kind of leaf hopper, but each one is about the length of your thumbnail, so they're quite large in size. And we typically see them in these really dense colonies. So you see the adults when they're pink, and then the younger ones are they almost look like an elaborate kind of lichen. They're bright white and they've got really incredible structures to break up their form. So a really exciting creature that we try and see within the dry forests. Julie also asks, is there a suggested bird book? And there are a number of field guides covering the birds and wildlife of Madagascar. Some excellent resources to use. I don't know any of the titles off the top of my head. They are broadly birds of the Indian Ocean Islands. I know one of the older books was Sinclair and Legrand, but I think Princeton and possibly even Lynx have recently published guides to the wildlife of Madagascar. So
Yeah,
that
I can't.
is some.
I can't lay my hands on them. I was looking at them today, and you should look at them, Julie, because it's mouth watering. The birds, even on the plates, and to see them flying around for real is going to be mind blowing. I mean, it's probably the strangest collection of birds in a field guide that I've ever seen. So before a trip or before a filming trip, I always like looking through the field guides and seeing, what I can expect to see. And I do it all the time. I've got a massive collection of field guides. Never seen a better one or a more mouth-watering selection of birds and mammals than in Madagascar.
Great. And we do have a related question from Colin asking, what is the recommended bird guide and can it be bought locally in South Africa? Yes, Colin. So I believe most exclusive books do offer certainly the Sinclair and Legrand Birds of the Indian Ocean Islands. It doesn't exclusively recommend Madagascar, and that the guide covers the Seychelles, Mauritius, Reunion, Rodrigues, and the Comores in addition. But of course, being a regional guide, it covers all of Madagascar and is quite an excellent resource to use. It's also worth mentioning that there is a Merlin pack for Madagascar. Merlin is becoming a quick and easy go-to resource that you can carry in your pocket. And there is a fantastic package for Merlin that includes all of the species we discussed today. Phil then asks, are leeches a problem? And Phil, it's a very difficult answer to a difficult question to answer in the sense that leeches largely depend on humidity levels. I have had some leeches. I've never had particularly bad leeches in Madagascar. I have had some leeches, particularly within the rainforest sites, but they generally aren't all that problematic. We do recommend carrying leech socks, simple stocking types that you pull over your pants and tie them up at your knee, and that's enough to deter all of the leeches. So typically they aren't problematic, certainly nowhere near as bad as in places like Sri Lanka or Thailand, but there is a slight risk of a handful of leeches, not all that many.
Yeah, and the great thing about leeches is even though they're irritating and you want to avoid being bitten by them because of the anticoagulant, and you bleed for a long time, they do not transmit diseases. So unlike mosquitoes and ticks and things, they're an irritant but not dangerous in the same way as other things are. So I don't like it just feels strange that you're actually feeding an animal. You're literally the host. I did a film called Animal Vampires where I was bitten by lots of leeches in Tasmania, but land leeches in Tasmania. But the great thing about them is they do not give diseases, and it's also great because they are now being used a lot in hospitals. If you sever a finger and you need to get the blood flowing again, the doctors use leeches on the other side of the wound, and they clear the congested blood and get the capillaries growing again. So leeches are our friends, but can be an irritant sometimes in the rainforest. But as Dan says, if you go to the Danam Valley in Borneo, there are thousands of them, and they can be a real problem. But Madagascar, from what I've read, I've never been there, but from what I've read, they're not too bad.
Wonderful. And then the final question that we'll answer, it's coincidentally by one of the guests who's already booked on the tour, Jack. Greetings, Jack. I hope you are keeping well. But Jack asks, what is the likelihood of seeing some of the Malagasy carnivore species, for example, the fossa? Indeed, we do have chances for fossa. We have seen them at a number of sites that we do visit on the tour. But I have to admit, on five tours to Madagascar, I have yet to see a fossa. Having said that, I've also very narrowly missed a fossa where I was walking a trail and a fossa ran behind me, and by the time I turned around, the fossa had long since disappeared into the forest. So there is certainly chance of seeing fossa. We do have chances at a number of the smaller mongoose or mongooses in some of the rainforest sites. But generally, you do have to be exceedingly lucky to catch up with some of the carnivores in Madagascar. They're quite difficult to see. Interestingly, also, some of the sites that we will be visiting are study sites for researchers working on the fossa. So we do occasionally see cage traps that are set for fossa, simply for the purposes of attaching collars to them to track their movements. So there is absolutely a chance of seeing them, but they are very shy by nature, and we would need to be exceptionally lucky to see them. So with that,
and we will be, Jack. So Jack and I will have the luck of the devil. So Jack's we met in a webinar, and he wanted to know about the television business, and we ended up. He came to Costa Rica, and I did some video clips with him, and now we've ended up making a film together in Bangladesh. And we were hoping to film the marsh finfoot. There's less than 300 left in the world. Half of them are in the Sundarbans in Bangladesh. And we got amazing film and had views of them on 2 of the 3 days we were looking for them. So, Jack, we will see a fossa on the Nigel plus Nigel trip. We will see one. We'll get the luck of the devil, I'm sure.
My fingers are very tightly crossed for you, Nigel. And with that, I'd just like to say one final thank you very much for your time this evening. It really is such a pleasure to connect with you, and we're so excited about this incredible opportunity to get you and your group to Madagascar. And we hope some of our listeners today may consider traveling with us to Madagascar. This really is such an exciting once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to travel with someone of your incredible caliber and experience. So we really appreciate all that you are doing to support us, and we thoroughly look forward to the opportunity of sending you and your group to Madagascar later this year.